does have...
Yeah, spoilers!
Hello, you beautiful nerds. I know it's been a minute since I made a video for you guys, but in the immortal words of Bender Bending Rodriguez, I'm back, baby! After watching a few really bad movies, I decided to do a deep dive on one of my favorite Netflix shows. Since there are all kinds of rumors swirling around about a special cameo in the next Spider-Man flick, I felt like this was a perfect time to get reacquainted with New York's best fictional blind lawyer. So get a little high, get a little drunk, but if you get too fucked up, Claire isn't here to save you. And let's talk about the devil of Hell's Kitchen, the man without fear. Let's talk about... But first, a prelude. You guys probably remember the Daredevil movie from 2003. And you probably remember Daredevil guest starring in our friend Spidey's 90s animated series. You may even remember this thing that happened in the 80s. I've certainly been familiar with this character since I was a kid. And after they announced that he was going to get his own Netflix show, I honestly didn't care. I mean, I like Daredevil and I like Marvel movies, but good comic book TV shows weren't very abundant. And I wasn't looking for a Daredevil show with the same quality as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The show is dumb as fuck. I knew I was gonna watch it because I'm a big Marvel zealot, but I didn't think I was gonna like it. Oh, what a fool I was. Netflix's Daredevil follows New York lawyer Matt Murdock. Hey, the kid from Ozark is in this show. When he was a kid, Matt got into an accident, as comic book characters are wont to do, and he lost his vision. But all of his other senses are heightened to a crazy degree. Then he gets trained to fight by a blind, no-nonsense ninja warrior to be a total badass. Now, as an adult, he's a defense lawyer by day and fights criminals by night. Fucking cool, right? The first season is very much a Daredevil origin story. It hits a lot of the same notes as a Batman Begins-like story, but it has the luxury of being able to tell a story over 13 episodes rather than 2 hours. The show explains Matt's backstory as a child, and it builds up to him getting his iconic red and black suit. The first season takes place at an interesting stage in Daredevil's life. He hasn't been doing this for very long. He doesn't even call himself Daredevil yet. And this is the first time his crime fighting has disrupted the ongoings of a well-oiled criminal organization. Machine.
Maybe if he had an iron suit or a magic hammer, that would explain why you keep getting your asses handed to you.
Which brings us to our villain of this season, Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson fucking Fisk. Wilson Fisk is hands down the best villain in the MCU. The show has a lot more time to develop the characters, but holy shit, they did an amazing job with Fisk. They not only show how he's developed this persona of an unpredictably violent crime lord, but also how deeply disturbed and lonely he is. I mean, he's so impulsive and emotionally immature, he's like the world's biggest, most terrifying child. And it makes the love story between him and Vanessa that much more heartfelt. The show takes just as much time developing Wilson's character and exploring his backstory as they do with Matt, and it really pays off. Speaking of our main character, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock is incredible. In this first season, we really get to see what kind of person Matt is. As a devout Catholic and a lawyer, ethics and morality play a big part in his life.
I've been preoccupied of late with questions of morality, good and evil. Sometimes the delineation between the two is a blur.
It's very telling that the first scene of the show is Matt in a confessional, apologizing not for what he's done, but what he's about to do. The desire to do the right thing is what drove him to be a lawyer and by extension a crime fighter. But he also battles with the morality of beating people senseless, mainly because he enjoys it. How does a lawyer claim to be doing the right thing when he enjoys breaking the law? I guess Daredevil is blind as justice is.
Nasty!
The thing about Matt and Fisk's motivation is they want the same thing. They want to make Hell's Kitchen a better place. They just have two wildly different ways of going about it and are on a collision course with each other. As a big old nerd, I also love the way that this was adapted from the comic book. The world building was well done and the characters developed throughout the season in an exciting way that makes you want to see what happens next. At the beginning of the season, they're Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk.
We don't say his name.
And by the last episode of the season, Matt Murdock is the Daredevil that we know and love from the comic books. The people who developed this show for Netflix clearly had a good grasp on what makes the character so compelling. I loved mostly everything about this show, but I'm gonna quickly rattle off some nitpicks about the season before I talk about my favorite stuff. Because really, that's all they are. They're nitpicks, not really complaints. No television show is perfect, and Daredevil is no exception, but these problems don't really ruin the show at all. But let's get them out of the way. Nitpick number 1, I hate Foggy. Not necessarily the way he's written. I actually kind of like his arc over the first 2 seasons. The actor playing him is just so terribly unbelievable in every scene. Now, I'm not saying the guy isn't talented. I liked fucking Mighty Ducks, but he's just miscast for this role. Number 2, that's really it. There's no number 2. I just hate Foggy. Okay, that's it for the nitpicks. Let's get into the season highlights. Number 1, Toby Leonard Moore as Wesley. Moore is great in this role. He's so cold, calculating, and precise. It just fills you with this sense of unease every time he's on screen. Number 2, Rosario Dawson as the night nurse.
Where am I?
You're in my apartment.
Who are you?
I'm the lucky girl who pulled you out of the garbage.
Dawson is always a joy to watch, and she just brings so much life to this character. Claire should be boring, but Dawson and Charlie Cox have a tremendous chemistry together. It's a little weird that every chick wants to bone Murdoch, but Charlie Cox is a snack. I get it. Makes sense. Number 3, the hallway fight. This fight scene changed fucking television. Every action show stepped up their fight choreography game after this came out, and if you had a season of TV without a one-shot hallway fight scene, you weren't cool. Including Daredevil season 2 and 3. Most fights in movies have two guys who never get tired or hurt just trading blows with each other. In this scene, every punch that lands hurts, and it takes a lot out of the guy doing the punching too. There's a feeling of I'm so exhausted, but I have to keep fighting. Otherwise, I'm dead. Number 4, violence. I'm not a big blood and gore guy, but this show was shockingly graphic and I loved it. Before this, the Marvel Universe was understandably pretty clean cut.
Shit! Language. No one else is going to deal with the fact that Cap just said language.
Even when Marvel tries to be like, oh, this isn't like other Marvel movies. This one's a political thriller. This one's a heist movie. This one's a bad movie. But they're all really the same. Daredevil, however, is a straight-up crime drama that happens to be set in the world of superheroes. You can kind of tell from the first few episodes that this show isn't going to have the same feel as a Spider-Man movie. I was like, holy shit, someone at Marvel lost their fucking mind and I'm for it. Number 5, Daredevil doesn't kill anyone. Batman movies kind of get on my fucking nerves because they keep making Batman kill people. Which is dumb because the whole thing about Batman and his vow not to kill anyone is directly related to his biggest foe, the Joker. If he were okay with killing people, he would have killed Joker a long time ago because he's the closest thing to irredeemable Batman has ever known. So it doesn't make any sense that he would kill these low-level thugs and keep a mass murderer alive. Matt is dealing with a similar struggle. Daredevil is the closest thing Marvel has to Batman, and he doesn't kill anyone on this show. It's his one rule and he doesn't ever break it. He wants to kill Wilson, but he can't. Not just because of his faith, but because he knows it's a slippery slope and the killing wouldn't stop with Fisk. I like the violent nature of the show, but I feel that it just highlights the darkness of the world and the uphill battle Matt has, rather than giving him an excuse to kill people or let people die.
But I don't have to save you.
So Matt gets sliced the fuck up by a ninja and decides he needs some new protective threads, and why not throw some devil ears on there for style?
They're horns.
Nelson and Murdoch get Fisk locked up and Karen continues to work for the firm. All is right in the world and nothing bad ever happens to Matty ever again. Nah, I'm just fucking around. His life fucking sucks. The second season pretty much starts where the first one left off. Nelson and Murdoch are doing a victory lap after putting Fisk in jail. Matt is still beating up bad guys in his brand new suit, except Foggy knows his identity now. And most of the big time criminals in Hell's Kitchen are in jail or in hiding. But uh-oh, now a bunch of gangsters are turning up super dead and Daredevil is trying to figure out who's responsible. So 2016 was a weird year where everyone had the same idea. We got 3 comic book properties where the story was superheroes fighting each other. Batman v Superman was clearly the worst. Civil War was really well done and personally my favorite Marvel movie, don't at me. But this was probably my favorite version of this kind of story. Let's talk about the worst version of this dynamic, Batman v Superman. Their conflict at any point in the movie could have been solved by a single conversation. They actively step in each other's way over and over in this perpetual dick measuring contest, but neither of them seem very concerned with resolving their conflict or saving other people. From the beginning, Batman's goal is to kill Superman. Not stop any of this other terrible stuff that's happening everywhere. He's trying to kill the strongest superhero in the world. Daredevil and Punisher fight a lot at first, but then they have a really long conversation. One of the best conversations I've ever heard between 2 superheroes. It's emotional and it's also thought-provoking.
You can stop now. Walk away.
Could you do that? Could you walk away?
Yeah, it's always fun to see superheroes fight each other. My inner child is still on the playground having an argument about who's stronger, Hulk or Thor. But this is deeper than that. It's a philosophical debate on the morality of crime fighting, and it poses the question, is a person responsible for their actions if they have no agency over the person they become?
You know what I think you, hero? I think you're a half measure. I think you're a man who can't finish the job. I think that you're a coward. You know the one thing that you just can't see? You know you're one bad day away from being me.
Message!
The tragic thing is that even though they both gain a lot of respect and understanding for each other, at the end of the conversation they're still on opposite sides. Neither of them want to kill each other, but they're in each other's way, so yeah, they fight some more. This season does an incredible job of introducing the Punisher. Played by the always scary John Bernthal, Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, is naturally weaved into the Daredevil's world. Instead of getting a by-the-books origin film or a season of television much like Daredevil, he's introduced as an antagonist in the same way that Fisk was in the first season. He does get his own series later, but in this season of Daredevil, they take a lot of care in explaining who he is and why he does what he does. This season is kind of split up into two parts, and in the second half, Matt is having a little girl trouble. There's a common dynamic in comic books and superhero movies, and that is the love triangle. Now, of course, the love triangle is nothing new. It happens all the time in storytelling. But comic books have a specific element of it that it tends to recreate. Let's use our old pal Spidey as an example. A lot of times a character is faced with two perfect mates to accommodate his double life. Mary Jane is the perfect person for Peter Parker. She's smart, funny, and she fell in love with Peter, not his crime-fighting persona. She isn't impressed by his super strength and agility. She loves him for who he is without the mask. But she also doesn't know his secret for a real long time. On the other side of that coin, we have Felicia Hardy, Pete's classmate who also moonlights as a cat burglar with the strength of Captain America. She's also smart and funny and all that, but she fell in love with Spider-Man. Every superhero worth his or her own salt questions the morality of their vigilante lifestyle. Though they're doing good, they're still breaking the law. Felicia, or Black Cat, doesn't judge Spider-Man for his crime fighting. She actually admires him, even though sometimes she's the crime he's trying to fight. In Daredevil Season 2, Matt has a similar love triangle. Karen has always been Matt's Mary Jane, essentially. For the longest time, she only knows him as Matt Murdock, and that's enough for her. This is especially intriguing to Matt because she represents a life without Daredevil. A normal life that's free of the burden that comes with being a masked vigilante. They do a good job of developing their relationship, and right when Maddie feels a sense of comfort and stability with Karen...
Elektra.
Hello, Matthew.
Miss Nachos, good afternoon.
Let's all prepare to be dazzled, shall we?
So, after putting Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, behind bars, Matt runs into an ex from college who just happens to be a trained soldier in an army against the forces of evil. They start working together because it looks like the ninja that kicked his ass in the first season was trying to keep a gigantic hole in the middle of the city secret. We'll find out later. But for now, ninja fight! Elektra is a fucking awesome character and is played spectacularly by Elodie Young. Ever since the 2003 Daredevil flick, I never thought the character of Elektra could work in a movie. Bad comic book movies, I mean, the really bad ones, leave a bad taste in your mouth and make you think that some stories and characters may not work when translated to film. But I loved Elektra's character in this season. Elektra is Matt's Black Cat. She has a secret as big as his.
You said you were blind.
No, you said I was blind. What about you? You said you took ballet lessons.
I did, in the winters, when my capoeira master returned to Angola.
For a long time, Matt feels like Elektra is the only one he can talk to about his anger and violence issues because she has her own trauma she's dealing with. Though she is arguably a better match for Matt than Karen is, she's still kind of a fucking murderer, so his morality is in direct contrast with Elektra's goal.
And if you get in my way, I'm gonna kill you too.
This season was fucking awesome. It was amazing. I loved almost everything about it, except these minor nitpicks. Number one, Punisher shows up at the end. This was cool for like 2 seconds, and then I was like, wait, why is he there? The 9-year-old me loved that he showed up, but the adult me was like, this is kinda dumb. Elektra's death. The way Elektra dies is kinda awkwardly done. Oh, spoiler alert, Elektra dies.
Oh my god, I can't believe it!
I get that they were trying to have her aesthetically die the same way that she did in the comic, but it seemed like a reach. She could have died in a more natural looking way than this. I don't even know what's happening here. Number 3, Foggy. He's still on the show. Anyway, that's it for the nitpicks. Let's get into the season highlights. Number 1, Karen. I really liked Deborah Ann Wall Karen Page. Her journey from damsel in distress / secretary to investigative journalist, it plays out really well, and I think that this is where she's at the peak of her strength and capability. Wall is a fantastic actress, but I feel like this is the only season where she's written well throughout. Number 2, the Distillers. In this scene, Elektra is listening to Die on a Rope by the Distillers, and I think that's fucking cool. I really like the Distillers. Ninjas. There's a ton of ninja fights in this season, and it's awesome. I fucking love ninjas. Comic book feels. This season feels the most like a comic book. Season 1 and 3 both feel like crime dramas, but this season not only adapts some really great storylines from the source material, it's also structured more like a comic book than a season of television. The second season feels like we get a bunch of adventures from Daredevil without it feeling like a monster of the week kind of show. So at the end of season 2, Elektra is dead. Or is she? Matt goes to Karen because he's super codependent and can't be single for like 2 seconds. And he tells her that
I'm Daredevil.
And the season ends with Elektra's body being in the hands of the hand, and she's being put inside a big ancient tomb. Spooky. So that's it for season 2. It's quite honestly the best of the 3 seasons to me. I love Punisher, I love Elektra, I love ninjas. I fucking love ninjas! I love all this spooky mystical shit. It's so gross, I love it. They really set this world up for big things while still keeping things small and grounded. And before we can get into season 3, we gotta talk about... I'm only going to talk about this season for a little bit because it's not very good. I only bring it up because I feel like I can't talk about the third season of Daredevil without talking about this ambitious yet poorly put together television event. The Defenders kind of ruins all the mystical stuff they started to introduce in season 1 and 2 of Daredevil. All the stuff with Naboo and the Hand and Stick and Elektra made it really feel like we were in for something cool. But then Iron Fist fucked up the baton race and did a bunch of dumb shit and kind of erased everything good that came before. And then the Defenders was like, oh, I didn't know we were doing dumb shit. Hold my beer. And just for the sake of whatever, let's briefly go over their characters. Jessica Jones, an alcoholic private investigator who has super strength and is action-packed with emotional trauma. She meets a bulletproof guy named Luke Cage at a bar. They fuck. Luke skips town to Harlem. You couldn't have gone a little further, dude. Luke Cage. Like I said, he's bulletproof. He meets a cop, they fuck, and they're friends now. Hey, Claire's on the show too. Then they fuck, and they're friends now. Damn, Luke fucks everyone. Watch yourself, Matt. Iron Fist. After super rich, super white Danny Rand is in a plane crash that kills his family, he's raised by kung fu monks to be a world-class martial artist. His powers include punching really hard and white privilege.
Power is stillness, and stillness comes from effortless flow.
The fuck is he talking about?
It all feels kind of rushed because they make decisions that are just baffling sometimes. There are a lot of these weird scene transitions, badly framed conversations, and Dutch angles. So many fucking Dutch angles. Like, why is everything sideways? And why is he holding a basketball? So in this series, the Hand is back. This time around, we're introduced to their 5 original members, the leader of which is Sigourney Weaver, a woman named Alexandra who's been around since like the beginning of time. And she's not very good in this. I mean, the character is badly written, but also her performance is pretty bad. We find out that the Hand is an ancient international criminal organization where all the members live in New York for some reason. Hey, there's a black villain. I wonder who he's gonna face off against later. By the time we get to like episode 6, the writing gets really bad. Sigourney's plan goes something like this. So there's this substance that these guys discovered in this mystical place called Kunlun. This substance apparently helps them achieve eternal life. But now they're running low on the stuff and she's dying. So her plan, instead of using the stuff on herself so she could live longer, is to use the last of their substance to resurrect Elektra, because she can fight good.
It was a bad plan. You planned things badly.
That seems really dumb. They mentioned that Elektra is the Black Sky, this mystical and mysterious weapon, but they never actually say what her powers are. The only thing it seems like she can do is fight really well. She's not even unbeatable. You have a lot of good fighters. Why would you resurrect her instead of healing yourself? Oh, look at that. She killed you.
Congratulations. You played yourself.
Oh, and Daredevil completely forgot about that big hole in the ground they found last year until now. Mark of good writing. Your main character forgetting really important shit. So in the big hole in the ground, there are the remains of an old dead dragon. So the rest of the plan is to extract the substance from the dragon, but then I guess it's gonna make the bones hollow and make the cave collapse, and that somehow is gonna destroy New York?
That structure. This is the dumbest.
I thought I was being too hard on the show when it came out, but watching it back to back with Daredevil, it's clear that the writing, directing, and chemistry within the characters was severely lacking. You could tell the directors and DPs of Daredevil really take a lot of care into composing their shots. Daredevil is visually astounding, and it makes the Defenders look that much more substandard. The only parts of this show that felt like a real show was when Matt and Jessica are together. Every time I saw Daredevil and Jessica Jones together, I was like, fuck, this is the show I want to watch. The two of them are the best part of the series, and I oh so badly wish that those two had their own miniseries, and then the Heroes for Hire had their own miniseries. I mean, a blind lawyer and an alcoholic investigator? I watch that fucking shit every week.
You look like an asshole.
Short scarf.
Also, this fight scene is pretty cool. I guess that makes it all worth it. So in the end of The Defenders, while all the other heroes escape the Dragon Bone Cave before they blow it up, Daredevil hangs back to snap Elektra out of her crazy. Elektra acts like a rational person just in time for a big explosion to destroy the Dragon Bone Cave and kills Daredevil. Or does it? The final season of Daredevil starts with Matty in pretty bad shape. Everyone thinks Matt and the Devil of Hell's Kitchen are dead, and he's pretty close. Also, his girlfriend died in his arms, then was brought back to life by an evil cult, and then died in his arms again. So he's still pretty upset about that. On top of that, his brain and sinuses are all swollen and full of dried blood, so he can't really hear. At least not like he used to. But a persistent nun is trying to keep his spirits up.
Someone once told me that warriors were meant to be alone. That caring for people would make me weak.
Sounds like he needed to get laid.
Karen's still kicking ass as a journalist, and Foggy's doing some survivor's guild shit. I don't know. I gave up on Foggy a long time ago. So we get introduced to two different villains in this season, Bullseye and Kingpin. I know what you're thinking. Fisk was in the first 2 seasons of Daredevil, but he wasn't the infamous Kingpin from the comics just yet. Like Riz Ahmed in The Night Of or DJ Qualls in The New Guy, Wilson Fisk came out a much worse person than he went in. Before getting arrested, Fisk deluded himself into thinking that his war on Hell's Kitchen was for the betterment of the city. Even while incarcerated, at first he just wants to keep his head down and not cause any trouble. After his time spent in prison, however, his motivations change and he seems to only be interested in sitting on the throne of the criminal organization. The first time we actually even hear the nickname Kingpin is during his tiff with Dutton, the man that ran the prison before Fisk decided that he wanted to. After he gets out of prison, he's more powerful and ruthless than before, but he doesn't do it without help. In this season, Fisk makes a deal with the feds to be transferred out of prison and spend the rest of his sentence in a luxurious hotel suite in exchange for information on other criminal organizations. While doing all of this, he's also slowly wrapping the entirety of the FBI around his finger and orchestrating the fall of Matt Murdock. You see, Fisk plans on framing Matt by getting this guy to dress up like Daredevil and do some super wild shit in his name. New character, Special Agent Ben Poindexter, is a fucking insane person. He is so fucking creepy and unsettling. Actor Wilson Bethel does a great job of tapping into his rage, and the show takes the time to portray how disturbed and socially inept he is.
And first things first, we're gonna practice empathy. So let's say, for example, that my cat got sick this morning and I was upset. What would you say to me? How about something like, I'm sorry, that sounds hard.
Sorry. Must have been really hard.
Bullseye is a weird villain. Bullseye's power, or whatever, is that he's got really good aim. This can obviously be depicted in a really lame way. But in this fight scene, beyond looking really cool, has a lot of character-defining moments. Like Bullseye and Daredevil are both good at fighting and throwing stuff. But Daredevil is way better at fighting, and Bullseye is way better at throwing stuff. And without having someone actually say that, they show all that in this scene. The show also depicts Bullseye as the dark mirror of Daredevil. They have similar trauma and anger issues, but had drastically different support systems growing up. This season, the more we learn about Matt's upbringing, the more we found out about Dex's and how close they were to being the same person. As adults, we can see the influence of their role models from Matt and Dex's respective relationships with Maggie and Fisk. They even hammered this theme home by putting Bullseye in Daredevil's costume.
Who are you? I'm Daredevil.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit!
So at the end of the season, Matt, Bullseye, and Kingpin get in this insane 3-way fight. Bullseye gets incapacitated, Matt and Kingpin come to a really bloody agreement. If Kingpin promises not to tell anyone that Matt is Daredevil, Matt won't send Fisk's wife to jail.
A gentleman's agreement!
Huzzah!
Matt, Karen, and Foggy get drunk and we fade out as the season and the series comes to an end. Alright, you know I got him, because I'm the worst. So let's go over the good, the great, and the nitty-picky things. Number 1, it's a little too long. Apparently, there was some disagreement between Marvel TV and Netflix on how long the season should be. There are conflicting reports on who, but one side wanted a shorter season and the other side demanded a full 13-episode season like the previous 2. This led to some really boring shit that didn't really move the story along. If it's not a scene with Matt or Dex or Fisk, it's not usually written very well. There aren't any filler episodes, but there are filler moments. I don't care about the story with Foggy's family. Karen's backstory, though it's important to her, it isn't important to us. If this reveal happened in season 1 or 2, it would have meant more, but it just seems like a very long exposition dump that they forgot to do earlier in the series. Number 2, Raiden D. Ray's character is boring. The actor Jay Ali isn't bad, and the scenes that he's in that move the story along are fine. It's just that every scene with his family is boring as shit. I don't care about his bad credit. I don't care about his kid that doesn't appreciate the immaculate house his family is living in. I just care about how he moves the Kingpin story along. Everything else is an attempt to humanize him, and I don't really care much about that. Number 3, Matt don't wear the costume. I missed the costume. Alright, that's it for nitpicks. Let's get into the season highlights. I really like the conversations Matt has with Sister Maggie, who, spoiler alert, is Matt's long-lost mother.
Oh my God, I can't believe it!
In the first act of the season, Matt is injured and super depressed, but he's on the path to a physical, emotional, and spiritual rehabilitation. He's pretty defeated in every sense of the word, and I love that it's his mommy that helps him get back on his feet. Number 2, Matt's hallucinations. When Matt is at his lowest point, he starts to hallucinate Wilson Fisk taunting him. These scenes are really well shot, having Fisk appear as a distant, shadowy figure, and the scene lets us know that Matt isn't really doing so hot right now. Number 3, this moment right here.
In here, we don't even say his name.
It's one of the rules, Ray. We only refer to him by his code name.
What code name?
Kingpin.
Yes!
Number 4, the prison fight. Okay, remember the fight scene in season 1? Yeah, they topped that shit in this season.
The fight itself is fantastic. It's desperate, seemingly hopeless at times, and the choreography and the blocking is really creative. The show definitely stepped their game up in the stunt department. In fact, the only reason that the show got snubbed for a stunt coordination Emmy nomination is because the spectacular one-shot 11-minute sequence that clearly would have won was too long to be considered. This is probably the darkest of the 3 seasons. It's character-driven rather than relying on action, and the emotional turmoil some of the characters go through is excruciating. Like, in a good way. Like Handmaid's Tale excruciating. Season 3 is probably my least favorite season, but it's still miles ahead of any other comic book TV shows. Or other TV shows, period. It's tough to make a good comic book TV show. Beyond budgetary restrictions, it's just hard to adapt these stories to screen. Marvel has done and will continue to do well churning out these clean, easily digestible movies. But Daredevil sought to test the limits of what a superhero show could do, and they made a gritty, exciting, upsetting, bloody mess doing it. And I fucking loved it.
Steve, you said a bad language word.
Okay, that's it for today, guys. Don't forget to click that like button. I mean, only if you liked it. Actually, if you hated it, click the like button anyway. Don't let society tell you what to do. Psh, society. Stay safe, stay sown. I'm drunk. Stay safe, stay sane, and may the force be with you.